as an American citizen. After taking Musa's keys and all of our passports, they allowed me back in the car.
He said not to leave yet.
Then made us wait for 2 hours while they drank Coca-Cola and doom-scrolled on their phones at a nearby watchtower. The arbitrary theatrics of it all reminded me of the process of getting into Palestine in the first place, which is only possible for Palestinians by entering the West Bank through Jordan. All in all, the process took 8 hours. Despite the crossing being over less than a mile in distance, it contains a grueling customs process that involves 3 checkpoints, 2 buses, 3 bag checks, and a final interrogation by an Israeli border agent, where you're essentially given a vibe check, asked a couple questions, and if they don't like your answers, you're banned from both Palestine and Israel for 5 years. During my interrogation, I told him that I was headed to party in Tel Aviv because of the repressive atmosphere of anti-Semitism in the U.S. dating market. He bought the story and let me in. But anyways, eventually, we were all released without charge and back on the highway.
Shameless, but fair.
Between Hebron. A path divided by separate highways, constant military checkpoints, and infinite repetitions of those big red signs, which the Israeli army puts up to scare visitors away from Palestinian enclaves.
This road leads to Area A under the Palestinian Authority. The entrance for Israeli citizens is forbidden, dangerous to your lives, and is against the Israeli law.
As mentioned, our driver, Musa, hails from the Aida refugee camp back in Bethlehem.
Welcome to Aida refugee camp. It's about 5,000 people live in this camp. Half of this number are young people and children.
He wanted to show us Hebron to show us a more intimate example of urbanized apartheid in the West Bank.
We are in Hebron now, talking about the colonizer, how they stole the people houses, how the Palestinian family dealing with all of that.
Which is constructed in such a way that Palestinians are made invisible, that the way the roads are constructed, the ways in which life takes place inside the cities, in a kind of factual and practical way, has been sequestered and made invisible.
In Hebron,
Lee Lewis Therox.
Factual and practical way has been sequestered and made invisible.
In Hebron, you'll see Israeli settlements physically built over top existing Palestinian communities, something you can't really see anywhere else. After we arrived, Musa introduced us to one of his friends, a local from Hebron, to get a more in-depth view of the city.
I'm sure some people watching might be wondering why your face is blurred. Could you kind of give us a little explanation?
I used to appear in my faces in many interviews and occasions, but after October the 7th, this became something really risky because in November 2023, I discovered that my face was published in a Telegram and WhatsApp group for settlers. They call it Eliminating the New Nazis.
As we explained last episode, settlers, as they're called, are illegal occupants in the West Bank of primarily Jewish heritage and foreign, non-Israeli nationality. They take it upon themselves to harass, intimidate, and sometimes kill Palestinians with impunity in an effort to gradually erase and replace the Arab population.
Just the lethality of it and the extent to which the objective of the settlers is, for many of them, it's to drive the Palestinians out.
For Palestinians who resist settlers in any way, even ideologically, their names, identities, and addresses are logged into dissident databases, like the one our guy just mentioned, and posted to social media to encourage further harassment.
I found my profile picture from Facebook, and they added their own touch to it, where they put a sniper lens on my head with my name, claiming that I'm a dangerous activist, which is really weird because I've never done any sort of activism. I'm not an activist. But this is one of the reasons it's really risky, and I don't want to risk it. That's the main reason, actually.
The first person he introduced me to was a disabled veteran of the Second Intifada, panhandling for change on the street, something that apparently has been quite common since October 7th.
جمال بدر أبو علان فلسطيني مصاب في ظهري رصاصة 35 سنة ما في لا رواتب ولا في عنا حدا يمد إيده إنا.
The PA, and because of lots of pressure.
Keep in mind, that very same person I was talking about in the beginning of the video, he was well, not really using his own opinion. He was like, now he basically called this video propaganda, and he was like, he wants to see propaganda from the other side too. I was like, what? I'm like, brother, what is this guy talking about? Yeah, XQC,
from America and Israel, they cut off his salary.
Like many veterans, Jamal lost his benefits as a direct result of Israeli pressure. As we discussed last episode, the governing body of Area A and some parts of Area B in the West Bank is called the Palestinian Authority, who were in control of the Gaza Strip until Hamas was elected into power in 2007. Compared to Hamas, the PA is moderate and have committed to non-confrontation with the Israelis since the Second Intifada wrapped up in 2005, which, as mentioned in our previous episode, was primarily caused by the collapse of two-state peace talks at the Camp David summit in 2000. Yet, in spite of the PA's good faith, Israel has continued to increase pressure on the PA.
This debt is not due to financial mismanagement.
but rather to the withholding and theft of our funds by Israel.
Israeli banks control 64% of the PA's monthly tax revenue, roughly $188 million per month, and frequently withhold or deduct these funds to pressure the PA to meet their demands.
This is the 10th month in a row that we've not received a single penny of our money held by Israel.
This system of illegal revenue control prevents the PA from being able to provide basic social services like benefits for veterans. They've also devastated the West Bank's medical infrastructure by revoking the medical degrees of all Palestinian doctors and medical professionals who earn their degrees from non-Israeli universities, while simultaneously calling for the assassination of any PA officials who so much as hint at the idea of a two-state solution after October 7th.
يعني عايشين من قلة الموت، ما في دخل، ما في شيء، بتنجبر انك تقول للناس اعطوني، تمد ايدك للناس، ما في لا دخل ولا فيها، يعني بدك تحكي يعني الوضع صعب، الوضع صعب، يعني الساعة احنا اهون من اللي في غزة، بس برضه وضعنا صار بده يصير يشابه شوي شوي، احنا قاعدين بنجر لوضع زي غزة وبزيادة.
There's a de facto sense in which life becomes intolerable. I mean, they're doing this in Gaza, right? They're saying like incentivized emigration, saying like you just leave. So I think there's a sense in which they, for many of the, certainly the far right, they just want the Palestinians to go. They see them as just an intractable problem that would have to be forced out.
Do you think that if Israeli society were to moderate a bit and kick out the fringe sort of Ben-Gvir Smotrich element and initiate good faith talks with the PA, do you think that like a two-state peace solution is possible in the future based upon what you've seen? Or do you think things are too far gone and the cycle of revenge and trauma is so deep now that it's just going to be a nightmare for the rest of eternity?
I remember in 2011 thinking, wow, two-state solution seems really tough at this point. And actually, you know, because the settlement incursions are so huge, the level, like the border would be, you know, so they talk about, population transfers, but you've got two non-contiguous terrains like Gaza and then the West Bank, and then also a very understandable sense of grievance. And a feeling on the Palestinian side is like, also there's right of return. Like, what about the houses we left in 48? Like, what about all the villages that were erased in 48?
Lots of families, they're still keeping the key, and even though they know all their houses destroyed in 1948, but it still gives them a hope that one day they will back again to their homes.
مدام الحكومة الإسرائيلية اللي فيها نتنياهو وحواليه بن كفير وسموتريتش اللي هي مدام هذول العالم بالسلطة العوض الله، لأنه الشعب اللي كمان الشعب الإسرائيلي عودوا اللي هو نتنياهو، عودوا إنه يصير مجرم، عودوا خلاه طلع مستوطنين شو بيسووا فيها أنا من سياسة ابن كفير ومن سياسة اللي أعطاهم كلهم سلاح ويلا روح طخط شايف شو بيسووا فينا. The
one thing I will say in this video, he does have a few, I don't know, I would say they're probably Jewish commentators in here. So again, to the people who say this is just one-sided, he does give perspectives of both.
Alright, let's talk about segregation. So, much like the West Bank is split between areas A, B, and C, the city of Hebron itself is split into two sections, H1 and H2. H1 comprises about 80% of the city and is home to around 120,000 Palestinians and operates under the full civil and security control of the PA. The remaining 20% of the city, H2, is entirely under Israeli military control. But H2 Israelis in Hebron aren't comfortable with the land they have. They want more of Hebron, often breaching the H1 barrier to harass and attack Palestinians.
وسخوا قنابل غاز وبدمروا العالم وبيعجبوا على الناس وبيحرقوا سياراتهم.
Holy shit.
Watch baseball all season long. Catch the action.
على الحرم إنه إحنا من فلسطين وبيحصرونا وبدمرونا. مفرق بالحلاوة إجوا يشمطوا قنابل وغاز وخنقوا الناس. في ناس أولاد صغار كمان خنقوهم.
And why do you think they do this?
إنه بدي ياخدوا الأراضي وكل وقت ما عنا بالحارة.
First off, these kids are very, very astute. I'm saying the wrong word, but they're very sharp for their age. But my goodness, they can't be no more than 9, 10.
اجوا اليهود الاحتلال سكروا محل ما احنا ساكنين، سكروا ما خلوش حدا يمشي منع تجول. احنا مشكلتنا مش مع اليهود، مع الاحتلال الصهيوني.
Why do you think that's so hard to understand for people?
مو اليهود بيسووش اشي، بس المستوطنين واليهود وهدول بالاحتلال بياخدوا الاراضي وبكسروا بخلوش الناس يوصلوا على الاراضي. انه اليهود بيسووا لنا شيء اليهود.
for all the people saying, well, look at him putting it on one side. No, these are kids. They have a fair understanding of the situation.
احتلال بيدمرونا بيطخوا علينا.
هذول الصهاينة والصهيوني انت ما تتفاهم معهم اصلا يهود بنفسهم مش متفاهمين معهم.
For a more in-depth history lesson with our local guide, we decided to sit down at a Palestinian coffee shop and get down to business.
Okay, guys, so before we start our walking tour, it's better to talk about Hebron in general. Hebron has one of the most complicated situations in the country because it's the only Palestinian city where you can find Israeli settlers living in the middle of it. If you go to Jerusalem or any other Palestinian city, you will find all the settlements located on the outskirts. But Jerusalem, actually, there is settlements located in the middle of the city, but what makes it different from Hebron, that sometimes when you walk in Jerusalem, you don't realize that you are passing by a settlement or you are inside a settlement.
Right. Every corner in Jerusalem, they make it look like as if they want you to remind you that this is not Palestine's Jerusalem, it's Israel's. And here you can see all those Israeli flags all over the place. And this whole contrast shows how there is this tired way of Israelizing Jerusalem, while in fact it does not really match the reality on the ground.
In a way, Hebron can be seen as a more intense version of Jerusalem, where while some Zionist settlements do exist, it's more of a destination for rabid bands of settler youth who flock to Temple Mount for occasions like Jerusalem Day with heavy security.
But this is not the case in Hebron, because the areas where all the settlements is located in the middle of the city is not accessible for Palestinians.
So you have urbanized apartheid here.
Yes.
Comparatively to by Jerusalem, where you have sort of suburbs that are walled off, maybe a mile from the highway.
Here it's so obvious. You notice directly as soon as you arrive to the area.
And obvious it was.
Here in Hebron in particular, you have apartheid segregation built into the urban core, which is not something you see elsewhere in the West Bank. Above this barbed wire chain link fence, there is an Israeli settlement that has physically been built over top of a Palestinian street that used to be the biggest commercial hub of the city until 2000. So as you can see, there's a 4-story apartment building right above me. They have a separate entrance to get inside of the street in front of it. They have Israeli flags in the window, and it's totally inaccessible to any Palestinians or foreigners who don't live there. So there's a total separate infrastructure that's been built illegally, but also as you can see, there's a ton of like garbage, rocks, and different heavy objects that have been dropped onto the metal above me. All signs indicate have been thrown by the settlers onto pedestrians who walk down the street in Palestine.
You know, it's sometimes said, oh, well, is there apartheid? You know, apartheid being the term that was used in South Africa for racial segregation. Does that exist in the West Bank? In my opinion, absolutely. The difference, though, you know, the apartheid in South Africa was explicitly, literally about skin color and texture of hair. So it was all about racial identity. In the West Bank, what you have is a sense of there's two communities with different ethnic identities. And by the way, some of the Palestinians are Christian, but obviously most of them are Muslim, and they are subject to a different legal regime. And in certain respects, I'd argue it's worse than apartheid. Like it's more militarized, it's less functional. Like life, I think, is more intolerable from what I observe and understand in the West Bank than it would have been in South Africa.
So we've mentioned 2 dates so far. The year 2000, when the second Intifada started, discussed last episode, and October 7th, 2023, the date of the Hamas attack on Israel, which resulted in the Gaza genocide and an increased pressure campaign on the West Bank.
We will destroy Hamas.
We continue to the end. Nothing will stop us. We will go to the end, to victory, no less than that.
I'm cautious about framing the situation there as some kind of ancient conflict or some unfixable stalemate between two frenzied religious groups.
I forget the date. I want to say 1948, but I also heard 1972. But I'm going to come back to that because hopefully he said
But to be fair, religious tension and violent clashes in Hebron go way back before the formation of Israel in 1948. Part of this is because the city carries as much religious significance for Muslims as it does for Jews.
And the most important part for them was this, the old city of Hebron. Why? Because the tomb of patriarchs is located here, where Muslims, Christian, and Jews believe that the Prophet Abraham and his wife Sarah, Isaac and his wife Rebecca, Jacob and his wife Leah, all of them are buried in a cave. And on top of that cave, a structure was erected later on, which became a mosque and later on was divided to a mosque and a synagogue, a Jewish synagogue.
Abraham is the shared prophet of Christianity, Islam, and Judaism.
Yes, for Jewish religion in general, this building considered the second important religious sites in the Jewish religion, and they also consider the Prophet Abraham the father of the Jewish religion, even though the Jewish religion came Abraham.
To break it down, the Cave of the Patriarchs is one of the most contentious sites in the world. Half the facility is a mosque for followers of Allah, and the other half is a synagogue for followers of Hashem, all of whom rejoice in the shared worship of Prophet Abraham, whose wife and kids apparently rest in the caves below. He might also be there too.
So the cave where Abraham lived is supposed to be 18 meters below us right now?
Yes.
And that's the entrance to the
That's
cave?
the main entrance to it. And only every morning at 9 a.m., the Palestinians who works here, they open the entrance to do an old tradition, which is lighting 4 candles and send it all the way down. So according to the story that was mentioned in the Genesis, Abraham, when he was living in Hebron, when his wife Sarah died, he wanted to find a proper place to bury her. So he bought the cave, he buried his wife Sarah there, and later on it became the burial site for Abraham and the rest of the family. So that's why this place is considered the only place in the world that represents the 3 main Abrahamic religion.
So this is one of the holiest sites for all 3 religions?
Yes. It's actually the only one, because in the rest of the world, you don't find a place that represents the 3 main Abrahamic religion in the same.
I'm gonna write that down. I didn't know that. I'll go back.
Hebron, when his wife Sarah died, he wanted to find a proper place to bury her. So he bought the cave, he buried his wife Sarah there, and later on it became the burial site for Abraham and the rest of the family. So that's why this place is considered the only place in the world that represents the 3 main Abrahamic religion.
So this is one of the holiest sites for all 3 religions?
Yes. It's actually the only one, because in the rest of the world, you don't find a place that represents the 3 main Abrahamic religion in the same structure.
Makes sense there'd be a lot of conflict in this particular place.
Yes.
Hey, what's up, guys? So as you can tell from the footage earlier, all right, back to Palestine. So let's talk about conflict. Far before the Zionist movement existed in Europe, and beginning in the mid-1500s, under the Ottoman Empire, Jews began migrating to Hebron to be closer to Abraham's cave.
How did Jews and Muslims live side by side in places like Hebron before Israel, before the Balfour Declaration, let's say under the Ottoman Empire?
In the Ottoman Empire, basically minorities, Christians, Jews, were treated mainly with disinterest until the modern period. It was sort of like you do your shtick, you do your thing, you organize your own charities, you organize your own educational system. We just don't care. Now, minorities had to pay a jizya, a tax, because they weren't conscripted, they weren't part of the army, and they were being protected, the theory was, by the government itself. But that tax was abolished in 1856.
Things were pretty much all good between religions in Palestine under the Ottoman Empire, but after they fell and the British took over around 1920, that all changed.
So in that period of time, you had Zionist immigration.
So British 1920s.
Around 1920, that all changed.
So in that period of time, you had Zionist immigration, you had a separate economy being set up, you had land being bought by the Zionists and the expulsion of Palestinians from the land. You had an underclass rising in the urban areas of Palestine. You had 2 different economies that were being set up, 2 different ruling structures under the British that were being set up. So you had this hardening of communal boundaries.
Gradually, the Arab Muslim majority began to view the Jewish population as an asset of the British occupation, especially after 100,000 European Zionists immigrated to Palestine in just a 6-year period between 1922 and 1928. By the end of that decade, tensions reached a boiling point, best illustrated by the tragic events of 1929.
There was a massacre that took place in 1929.
One of the things that took place in Palestine was in 1929, where there is an escalation started in Jerusalem between Palestinian Muslims and new Jewish immigrants who immigrated to the country. It started in Hebron after the British army used some Palestinians who have interest with the British government and raised rumors in the city that a massacre was committed against the Palestinian Muslims in the old city in Jerusalem. And people get panic. They decided to leave the city trying to reach Jerusalem, but all the entrances of the city were closed by the British army. So what happens, people went back to the market and they found that a massacre or a clashes started against the Palestinian Jewish community living in Hebron.
There was a massacre of Jews, about 70 Jews were killed.
The 1929 massacre led to the destruction of Hebron's Jewish community and the exodus of every last Jewish person living in the city, many of whom were among the Palestinian Jews that comprised 10% of the population before Zionist immigration began.
Most of the people who lived in Hebron before the massacre of 1929 were indigenous Jews. The Zionist population was never a significant part of the Hebron population.
Indigenous Jews of Palestine.
Of Palestine, yeah. I mean, these people who either came back before the Zionist movement or who could trace their ancestry way back.
Understanding 1929 is crucial in grasping the kind of narrative that's fed to settlers in order to justify further incursion into the West Bank. Isolated from context and stacked against other horrific things that have happened to Jews in different parts of the world, it grooms settlers to believe that seizing or living on Palestinian land after the formation of Israel isn't an illegal act of cruelty, but rather an act of retribution to avenge their forefathers.
This is something that, is very central to...
Now, see, this is what you call a productive insight into, well, I don't know his position, but he seems to be he's likely Jewish, but he's very, very attuned. I keep saying attuned, that's not the right word. He's very aware of the historical events, which I'm going to be very honest, I was not aware of, but that's how...
mythos. Because the massacre fits up there with other massacres that have taken place, like Kishinev in Moldova in 1903, like the Farhud in Baghdad in 1941, like the Holocaust. All these things add up to a rationale for Zionism, that Jews can't be safe anyplace else, that they're going to be massacred. They're going to be massacred in Palestine. And so therefore, what we have to have a strong state that will support the Jews, that will build the Jews, build the Jewish population.
Why are you still using bots for your meetings? How else am I going to remember what happened? Just use granola. Okay, what?
Timeline-wise, it wouldn't be until around 20 years after the formation of Israel in 1948 that Jews began returning to Hebron after decades of absence.
On March 1968, a group of Zionist American 75 people from the Jewish community of Brooklyn, New York, they arrived to the country.
And in 1968, they actually, a group of Jews went into one of the larger hotels in Hebron as, pretending to be Swiss tourists. And they set up shop there, and they refused to leave. And the Israeli army wanted them to leave, and they finally negotiated a settlement for them leaving, and they ended up founding a settlement called Kiryat Arba, which is, in existence to this very day.
So the Israeli army was so annoyed with this group of American Jews pretending to be Swiss people who wouldn't leave the Palestinian hotel room that they actually built them a place to live.
Yeah.
And since then, the population of settlers has gone from a couple dozen hotel guests to over 1,000 souls living in H1.
One of the key factors in apartheid is closing down the commercial centers that belong to the oppressed group who once called the area home. This iron fence was put up to restrict one of the main Palestinian commercial centers that used to exist up until the year 2000, after which the Israeli army shut down the street and began, or I guess continued, building these massive private settlements right above it. So right up there is a private basketball court where you can shoot hoops, as the Americans say. As you can see here, all of this trash is the accumulated rubbish that people have thrown down from the settlements since their construction back in the day. So there's a stray cat hanging out there, which I've learned is a very common sight here in Palestine. You have cats everywhere, a couple dogs, but mostly cats. There is some donkeys. But yeah, this is pretty crazy to see. You can just imagine this exact street thriving as a commercial hub. You can see these sealed off storefronts that you can just tell used to be full of energy, excitement, and oh shit. So that's a settler and Palestinian cat fight. Cats obviously are not aware of the political situation, but it's a metaphor for what's going on.
Even if these cat-infested barriers weren't built and there was freedom of movement, though, Palestinians would still be subject to arrest if they tried to cross into H1 without military authorization.
So this massive purple area that you have here on the map, it's coded purple because it says travel forbidden.
Yeah.
So you have almost half of the urban core restricted to Palestinians.
But this division appeared in 2000. That's why after 1984, the city was still accessible, that part of the city without any problem. Then in 1987, the first Palestinian civil uprising started, known as the First Intifada.
So, we've talked about the Second Intifada a few times, but the first one began for almost identical reasons: Palestinian frustration with the military occupation of the West Bank and Gaza Strip. But the key difference between the First and Second Intifada is that the first one led to a conversation, a negotiation between the Palestinian Authority and the Israelis.
And unfortunately, it resulted in signing an agreement known as Oslo Accord or Oslo Agreement.
The Oslo Agreement, discussed last episode extensively, is the reason for the Area A, B, and C divisions in the West Bank, and widely regarded as a failure on both sides of the coin.
For us, or for me as a Palestinian, I found that agreement was the worst agreement that was signed in the Palestinian history.
Why in particular?
Because it gave the Israeli occupation a legitimate face to it, and it gave them more time to maneuver and to implement facts on the ground, which is today, I don't want to say impossible to change, but it's really hard to change.
So the initial agreement was signed on September 13th, 1993. And less than 6 months later, the Muslim community of Hebron would experience a horrific act of terrorism that reshaped the city forever.
Let's talk about the main incident that took place in Hebron back in 1994, which changes everything. So in 1994, an American Jewish person from New York, he didn't like Oslo Agreement, and this is the case for the extremist Jewish settlers. They didn't like it because it will give an idea about creating a Palestinian state. So that settler, Baruch Goldstein, he woke up on the 25th of February 1994, 5 a.m. in the morning, and he put his full military gear, his full military uniform, and he walked all the way to Al Ibrahimi Mosque. He went inside the building where thousands of worshippers, they were in the middle of a prayer. He opened fire and he killed 29 Palestinians, injuring another 150.
There is blood all over the carpets, the blood all over the floor. The scene is the most horrific scene I ever seen in my life.
That incident actually changed the whole city from 1994 until today. Mosque. He went to his Palestinian state. So that settler, Baruch Goldstein, he woke up on the 25th of February 1994, 5 a.m. in the morning, and he put his full military gear, his full military uniform, and he walked all the way to Al Ibrahimi Mosque. He went inside the building where thousands of worshippers, they were in the middle of a prayer. He opened fire and he killed 29 Palestinians, injuring another 150.
There is blood all over the carpets, the blood all over the floor. The scene is the most horrific scene I ever seen in my life.
That incident actually changed the whole city from 1994 until today.
Okay. I'm sorry, I had to pause. Wanted to give a brief, just a little. What do you even say? How do we go from the agreement just simply not being of value to this extreme? How wasn't this checked? Or how was
that took place in the city, more military presence, but the most important thing, the building itself was divided to a Muslim mosque and a part of it was converted to a Jewish synagogue.
Is this the main room of the mosque?
Yes, the main hall of it now after 1994.
So the area where the massacre happened is closed?
No, it was here.
So the massacre happened right here?
Yes.
So a lot of these bullet markings are from that shooting 33 years ago?
Yes. You can see a bullet hole here, one here.
And people were just praying when that happened?
Yes, actually they were in a specific position where their foreheads, their knees and their hands touching the ground when he started opening fire at them before he was attacked by a group of people who beated him to death.
Goldstein attempted to escape but was stopped by a crowd and beaten to death.
You know, then after that, you had protests that emerged and riots that emerged throughout the West Bank. The army went in and basically divided the city at that point. And so then you get H1 and H2 out of that.
Is it true that Ben-Gvir, the active Minister of National Security, for quite some time, had a framed portrait of the mass shooter in his living room?
Yeah.
And they let this guy...
There was a shrine that was built in this guy's, honor.
The mass shooter?
Yeah.
Why?
Because he was a mass shooter.
Yeah, but I mean, like, I know that internet kids nowadays, like all the white supremacists love the Christchurch mosque shooter because they hate Muslims. But I mean, mid-90s, honoring a mass shooter pre-Columbine.
They didn't look at it as a mass shooter. They took it as somebody standing up for the Jewish people.
Why?
ChatGPT is not the time. Terrible ads.
Well, you and I would say because they're crazy.
I just find it crazy that that kind of fringe extremist
Like,
element
this
is
from his point of view, this wouldn't be the message you're trying to. This wouldn't be what you should want to acknowledge and like accept as the message, given the history, given the complicated history, believing that you deserve to be there. That's his take. The shrine. How could you even? I wouldn't be able to because, like, again,
given a seat at the table.
Trying to do something like that, like anywhere in the world, I don't see it being remotely like possible for someone to get that off.
They are, and that's one of the aspects of this Netanyahu government. He was so desperate to form a government that he brought in people who were basically would be shunned by any other government, in process of formation. Ben-Gvir, other people as well.
Yeah. You think that those guys will end up somewhere like Nuremberg a few decades down the line?
No. Do you think Trump is ever going to be held up as a war criminal, or Hegseth is ever going to be held up as a war criminal in spite of the fact that they're ordering war crimes being committed?
Right, but I mean, Trump's not walking around the border putting people in chokeholds. Ben-Gvir tucks his shirt in and walks around yelling at minorities. He's kind of got like a little bit of an African warlord thing in him.
Well, he's got, he can't travel to much of the world. He can't travel to Europe, for example, no Mediterranean vacations.
France has decided to ban Israel's far-right police minister from access to French territory.
After exiting the mosque, we headed over to the synagogue side of the facility, which apparently our guide couldn't come to.
Because you're Christians and not Muslims, you can go into the mosque and then go to the synagogue if you want to.
Okay, cool.
He can't go with you, though.
All right.
Okay, because he's a Muslim.
All right, thank you. Well, I'm sorry we have to leave you here.
And I don't want to wait here because the soldiers are crazy, so I will wait you up. Okay, see you.
So now we're going to enter the synagogue here that was established after the mass shooting in '94 to see what the vibes are and see the wall from the other side. There are some Jewish worshipers down there in absolute ecstatic joy, singing, dancing, and giving prayers to Hashem. Spitting bars for proto-Jesus. There's a lot of American connections you can see pretty much present everywhere. This was dedicated by the Goldman family of New York, not too far from where I grew up, in Philadelphia.
So let's talk about New York City, the Big Apple, which financially powers the majority of H-1 settler operations, aside from the Army guns themselves, which you, American taxpayer, pay for yourself.
Well, I mean, you see Smotrich at the Israel Day rally in New York?
No, I didn't.
Smotrich was out there just walking around, holding a banner with Eric Adams.
Yeah.
Crazy stuff.
Yeah, at the same time, Mamdani, refused to attend the, and good for him.
Why would he go?
No, that's the idea. It's good for him.
Did you ever see that classic, mayoral debate panel back in the day where they asked each candidate where they would go if they had a vacation week or whatever? And everybody said Israel up there except for Mamdani.
No, I didn't see that.
It was like a cartoon. Everyone was like, I'd go to Israel.
I would go to Israel.
First visit, I would visit the Holy Land.
I would stay in New York City. My plans are to address New Yorkers across the 5 boroughs and focus on that.
Like, it was like they were all, had a gun to their heads.
Yeah.
And that was a hot topic already. They chose to move forward with it. I don't see how that was the play.
NYC is a crucial player here because within Israel itself, settlement expansion is actually quite unpopular, especially amongst the youth, and has been the subject of many a protest on the Israeli left. For this reason, among others, the companies in charge of selling real estate in places like Hebron within settlements often advertise abroad, especially in the US, to rope American Jews into either moving to the West Bank or making some kind of big donation.
The only way that this apartheid is still continuing today is because it has strong financial pillars. One of the biggest donors for settlers in Hebron in the state are from the United States. And we're talking about the biggest charitable American organization. It's called Hebron Fund. This organization, Hebron Fund, is in charge of funding Israeli settlers, collecting donations to the settlers here to sustain what we see today.
So the Hebron Fund, located smack dab in the middle of Brooklyn, is responsible for the renovations to the synagogue in Hebron and are the primary chaperones of the transnational migration pattern that keeps the settlements booming. Here's some coverage captured by our East Coast correspondent, JP, outside an event in New York City, where allegedly settlement condos and land shares are being advertised and sold inside.
What's good? We are here on 67th and 3rd Street in front of the Park East Synagogue in New York City for the Great Israeli Real Estate Event of 2026. It's in a series for the Great Israeli over the past year of different land in the West Bank and in Israel. We're about a mile from the UN, who has said that sales of these nature are illegal under international law.
I believe there's a real estate agency inside there. They're selling land to Jewish people to go to Israel, or whoever wants to buy homes in Israeli places over there.
Anti-Semitism levels in New York City are off the charts. Unprecedented levels of anti-Semitism, of hate crimes against the Jewish community. Do Jewish lives matter? I guess not to the left.
What charlatans, what frauds they are. They're coming here.
See, the once I hear the left or right argument, I'm like, oh, no, sir, sorry. That's you listening to goodness knows how many news stations. We don't need that. Your point, initially, you should just stuck there. Boom. Like, as soon as someone says the left or the right, I say, oh my goodness, can we please? Like, I know the buzzwords are just going to be, they're going to catch, they're going to stick, but we all can think critically, and yeah.
Here
I just don't like the buzzwords.
in the middle. What hate crimes against the Jewish community? The Jewish lives.
Also, this is reference to some, I'm assuming he's Jewish, he has to be. Basically giving his take. So this video is Heart of New York. So you get the different sides.
I guess not to the left.
What charlatans would.
This one was interesting because, I mean, he's obviously very well, like, Jewish. But his take is, it says a Jew is not a Zionist.
Frauds they are. They're coming here openly in the middle of a genocide, trying to sell the lands that they're presently evacuating. They're wiping off the inhabitants from the land and selling that land. It's an insult to common sense, and it's an insult to Judaism and to the Jewish people.
Oh, so I guess it's illegal to sell land in America because America is a settlement land, isn't it? Didn't we conquer this land 250 years ago? Literally in July 4th it's going to be. So this land is stolen land. It was settled by, Native Americans, correct? Wasn't this land correct for Native Americans? Are we all Native Americans? None of us are Native Americans. Those people are at the reservations, aren't they? Every land in the Middle East is settled land, because Egypt was Coptic Egyptian, Yemen was Jewish, Syria was Christian, and the Muslims took it over. So that's
well, to the U.S. point, I mean, most people would probably say yes, but I mean, good luck trying to take back that land from us. Like, that point didn't really land anywhere. Like, it's like, of course, but the likelihood of that happening is just negative 2%, maybe lower. Yemen, I will look into. And his claim about most of the Middle Eastern land being borrowed or occupied, it's probably not accurate. More than likely not. But it's worth looking into.
Land, they're occupied land. If you go again back into biblical times, Muslims didn't live in those areas. Muslims were created 600 years after the birth of Jesus Christ.
And the synagogue has the right to invite whomever it wants. It's not an illegal purpose.
The movement of Zionism is a terrorist movement, and you dare to stand up and defend it. Be embarrassed of yourself.
So if I was hosting an event that was showing you potential speculation for how we can sell children out of a church, everyone in the world would know exactly what that was. It would be illegal. It would be both under international law as well as New York law. You cannot plan to commit a crime. And the reality is, having been inside these places, they absolutely do commit war crimes all the time directly out of these synagogues. They're using it, as they like to say, as a human shield. But the reality is, there's no defending what they do without whataboutism or outright lying, the second of which is more common on their end.
With all due respect to Channel 5 or whatever lefties you are, with all due respect, they're here to call for the destruction and annihilation of the world's only Jewish country.
I'm here to support the empire. Don't be an anti-Sithite. Galactic Empire is the most moral empire in the entire galaxy. Here we go. I'm with you guys. I'm supporting the empire. Anakin Skywalker has done so much for young Jedi children.
That's not the that's not the clip he wanted to get. That's kind of crazy that he actually tried to make that claim. That's a pretty bad.
If you guys don't want to live
argument.
in the Galactic Empire, why don't you go to Dagobah?
Yeah, like he literally slaughtered, I think, God knows how many Jedi underlings in that clip. That was, yeah, that's pretty bad on his part.
Or Tatooine. There we go. I support the empire. Support the empire. Yes, you support the empire, sir, right?
Walter
Do you support the empire?
And this is Walter Matheson.
What do you think about him?
Walter Matheson is a weird mother. All I can tell you is this is the guy who was in Gracie Mansion, and when he told him that everybody is welcome into the United States of America or into New York because he didn't like ICE, ISIS supported terrorist guy came over his shoulder and threw IED or some type of an explosive.
You don't get to come from outside and then tell everyone else.
He needed to see that not everybody is welcome here. Not everybody is peaceful. And the people that he wanted here, the immigrants, threw a bomb over his face.
This so-called Jewish state is a fraud. It's not a Jewish state. It's a Zionist occupation. When they made the state, you can see this is David Ben-Gurion reading the Declaration of Independence. They're rebelling against God. They're not even covering their heads. As you see, every Jewish male is required to have a covering on their head. And here they're making a so-called Jewish state. At this historical moment, they didn't even deign to at least to make themselves appear as some representative of Judaism.
The Hasidic community is split on the question of Zionism and the question of Israel, because some of them say that according to Scripture, God will bring the Jewish people back to Palestine. And this is forcing God's hand, and this is something you don't do. You don't tell God what to do. So fundamentally, we don't go to Palestine, we don't go to Israel, we don't build a state in Palestine or Israel, we don't try to force God's hand.
Jews and Muslims lived together for hundreds and hundreds of years.
Correct.
Although we have a distinctly different religion. It was never an impediment to coexistence.
I don't really like the word use Palestinians because Palestinians is just an ideology. But let's just use the word Palestinians. They were offered 5 times to have their own land, a 2-state solution. They rejected it every time.
What would you say to people who just believe that U.S. taxpayer dollars should not be contributing to a war in the Middle East?
I say tough luck. Unfortunately, civilians are always going to die in war, and they are going to be collateral damage, whether it's going to be on the Israeli side or the Gaza side. Iran, Lebanon, the Houthis, and Gaza, they're all been shooting rockets indiscriminately into Israeli airspace, where it lands, wherever it lands, they don't care. They've been screaming boom, boom, Tel Aviv. So what are these people any different?
All right, that's enough from the Americans. Back to Palestine. After scoping out
this is the average person's like worldview on it. Dude. Yeah. Like, sure, there was merit to it, but he said there's lives going to be lost in war. I'm like, oh no, okay. That is where we're at. I know some of the boomers, 45, not 45, like 55 and up, they think similarly, but no, that's just not, that's just not the right approach. That's not the right perspective. It's not also tough luck either, because it's coming from you too. You should probably want peace. Which is the only weird thing. It's like you should probably look for peace, not like, again, in the moment, feelings or the emotions are high, so he's probably just expressing himself. But That was a very
the synagogue service, we
weird-
decided it was time to leave and link back up with our guide. As we returned to the central market, I began to see the few Palestinian shops that remained start to close their windows and
Weird
put away their
endpoint.
wares. What already felt like a ghost town was getting even more desolate.
So that is the IDF or IOF behind me. They're pushing people out of the way so that settlers can walk through. So for those who don't know, can you tell me your name and where you're from?
My name is John. I'm from Dallas, Texas, in the United States.
What brings you out here today?
I was just tired of sitting on my hands and not doing enough to help the Palestinian cause.
And what specifically is happening right now?
Right now, what we can see down the street here is what we call the incursion or the invasion. Every Saturday, the military closes down all the shops. They force the Palestinians to close their shops, and they are escorting young settlers throughout the city.
So you have about 50 to 75 settlers behind 4 to 5 armed security guards, or specifically 15 members of the military. They're going to walk them through the street. So you have the army telling people to get back with guns and stuff, saying let them do their thing, or let's get
That's wild. To catch that on camera too, that's actually wild.
That you can come and visit Palestine, but if you want to understand the occupation, apartheid, and silent ethnic cleansing, you should come and visit Hebron, because this is the city that provides you with the actual feeling of what an apartheid means, what a violation for any human rights. You can see it and live it here on a daily basis.
With everything going on here, it's hard not to be curious about what the Palestinians plan on doing to fight back.
Do you think there's any possibility of a real armed resistance growing here in the West Bank?
طبيعي ما هو كثر الضغط شو بسوي ولا التفجير هذا الاشي يعني هم متوقعينه هم عارفين انه رايح هذا حكي يصير تضغطني ما بس شو بدي اسوي لك لا بدي ادافع عن حالي لا بدي اموت لا بدافع عن حالي وهذه ما يبدا هيك وهيك بدي اموت بس بموت وانا واقف وانا ثابت
ناخذ حقنا وندافع عن الوطن.
So you would fight to resist what's going on here when you get older?
جاهز.
جاهزين كل العالم جاهز كل فلسطين كلها جاهزة بس قولوا يا رب.
Do you want to give a message to the kids in the United States about what's going on here?
بدنا يوقفوا الحرب عن أهل غزة.
انه يوقفوا الحرب بس هذا بدنا اياه
يوقفوا الحرب عن غزة يوقفوا الحرب
بس هذا اللي بدنا اياه في الحياة
انه توقف الحرب والعدوان اللي بيصير في العالم والسلام.
The idealist in me, I began wondering whether a single state solution with everyone with the same rights might be possible. Like that seemed in a way more realistic, but maybe not. I mean, maybe that's naive. I mean, it does have, Belgium is essentially a state with two separate and distinct national identities, like the Walloons and the Flemings. I mean, that would be the future for Ireland, I would have thought, like, is a single state encompassing the whole of the island of Ireland. So is that really, I mean, it's, in a sense, it's way above my pay grade. And I sort of
a single state. Given the brief understanding and information we have here, a single state. So the two-state solution, which is the preferred option by many, is probably the one getting the most pushback, even though it's the preferred option from both sides, it seems. Well, both sides that aren't like have any extreme ties or anything like that, to my understanding. A single state, though, I mean, the governing body to the tension already on the ground. Do you keep things the way they are? Do you try to reset them? You need a lot of backing. You need to basically strip a lot of the current ecosystems of, like, not say corruption, but the blatant disregard of, like, the people there. You would have to do a lot. It's not the cop-out solution, but it feels like the solution that you can maybe stick. But I mean, again, how are you reverse engineering? Well, you can't reverse engineer any of this. The history's in the history. That would take a decade decades to even remotely have as a possibility, and then implementing it, keeping not just an agreement signed that sets off a chain reaction. You would need, I don't even know how you would make sure both sides honor that.
Focus on where I see kind of organized irrationality or organized like predation and violence. It is a hard one to crack.
Despite the objectively bleak situation, and in the absence of a clear path forward, most Palestinians are firm in the belief that eventually freedom will come.
For sure it's gonna happen. One day it will be a state of Palestine without occupation.
So you have hope for the future as far as Palestinian sovereignty and statehood?
هذا مجبور، هذا مفروض، هذا ما في إلا تكون، إلا في الآخر إلا تكون في مجال، إلا تكون يعني رضوا ما رضوش هذا إجباري بده يكون يعني.
After seeing urbanized segregation in Hebron, I wanted to visit the rural front lines of settler conflict to a village somewhere outside the urban core, where Arab Bedouins were subject to the kind of attacks that I'd seen through a great deal of more outsized segregation in Hebron.
رضوا ما رضوش هذا إجباري بده يكون يعني.
After seeing urbanized segregation in Hebron, I wanted to visit the rural front lines of settler conflict to a village somewhere outside the urban core, where Arab Bedouins were subject to the kind of attacks that I'd seen through a great deal of user-generated content on social media. So we hopped back in the car with Musa and drove even further south to the villages of Masafayata, most notably featured in the award-winning documentary No Other Land. Our plan was to meet a local official and get a full tour of a village on the front line of this horrible conflict. If you'd like to see this coverage and support us while doing it, and also if you want to see the full 2-hour sit-down with Louis Theroux, head to our Patreon at www.patreon.com/channel5. If I had it my way, everything would be free. But hiring fixers, renting equipment, traveling across the world and fighting lawsuits against powerful people is very, very expensive and time-consuming. So we need your support. Channel 5, as mentioned, is a totally independent crowdfunded newsroom.
Love it.